Imagine a silent room in the heart of Switzerland. Only four men sit around a table. There are no screens, no projectors, no thick stacks of documents, and certainly no sign of any assistance. At the center of that meeting is a 71-year-old man. Throughout the entire meeting, he speaks for exactly 6 minutes. 6 minutes. But immediately after the final nod, the entire room begins to move. Massive flows of capital shift enough to alter the economic fate of several developing nations. And the most unsettling part is not its scale. The most unsettling part is that almost no one in the world even knows this meeting exists. A world where decisions that shake the globe are not made through grand speeches, but through nods in the dark. Today, what we are about to do is decode an incredibly common misconception about money and power in the financial industry. Most people, when looking at the glittering glass towers of Wall Street or London, instinctively assume that money is the only metric, that money is the ultimate destination. A very understandable line of thinking. But when all the data is pieced together, the analysis of the seven-layer power structure in high finance, along with the raw accounts from those who have actually lived inside that system, a different truth begins to emerge. Power is what shapes everything. This system has evolved from extracting physical labor to its limits to the ability to manipulate entire global economies. And to understand that 6-minute nod in Geneva, we must start from the very bottom, where a person's power is precisely zero. Level 1 of the power pyramid. It has the face of a 23-year-old graduate carrying $70,000 in debt, sitting in front of 3 flickering computer screens at 5:47 a.m. Beside him is a cup of coffee that has long gone cold. His starting salary, $120,000 to $150,000 a year. On the surface, that sounds like an enormous number, a life-changing dream. Until you realize he works 80, even 100 hours a week. At that intensity, salary is no longer a reward. It is simply a maintenance cost, just enough to keep the machine from collapsing. They build every model, every complex valuation framework. But the ones operating that machine have absolutely no voice. They are merely the final recipients of instructions. Their power is zero. But there is a story that circulates within the financial world. A young analyst, while working, accidentally discovered a $2 million error buried deep inside his superior's model. Under normal logic, the natural reaction would be to raise his hand, "Boss, I just found a $2 million gap." To demonstrate his capability and be recognized, promoted. But he did not do that. He quietly fixed it in his own file and did not say a single word to anyone. Why? Because we are applying the logic of the normal world to a system that operates under entirely different rules. Imagine this. If that analyst had reported the $2 million error, the first thing that would happen is not praise. The first thing that would happen is that the mid-level manager who approved that model would lose face in front of the director. And an employee who seeks to stand out can be more dangerous than $1 million error. Suddenly, the one who discovered the mistake becomes the one who must explain himself. At this lowest level, the system is not designed for absolute honesty or transparency. It is designed for one thing only: controlled silence. Keep the machine running, no disruption, no friction, no questions asked in the wrong place. His silence is not cowardice. It is the first lesson the system teaches anyone who wants to survive inside it. And if they survive that phase, they move up to level 2 associate. And at this point, the dynamics begin to shift. From being invisible, they are granted access to decisions. They begin to sit in the side rooms of major meetings. They begin to touch real deals. The records mention a $180 million mezzanine financing deal. Mezzanine, simply put, a bridge loan between debt and equity. Extremely high risk, extremely high interest, but in the event of default, the lender can convert it into equity. And at the associate level, they can already sit across from a client's chief financial officer, explaining every covenant breach scenario without hesitation, without stumbling, because they have stayed up all night to write those scenarios, and that was the 40th time in the past week. But their nature has not yet changed. Analyst or associate, they are still like mechanics in the engine room of a massive ship. They shovel coal oil, the machinery keep the engine running, so the ship can surge forward. But they have absolutely no authority to steer. And they do not even know where the ship is going. No one can remain a mechanic forever. To move up, they have to step out of the engine room. They become Vice President Level 3, where many things begin to change. Here, they own the entire process of a deal. Not just a part, but the entire thing. A $620 million deal, for example, from start to finish, from structuring to execution, everything rests on their shoulders. But along with that power comes something called invisible ethical erosion. And this is where things start to become truly uncomfortable. They have to restructure a client's pension fund to achieve a 22% IRR. IRR, internal rate of return, is the metric investors use to evaluate the profitability of a deal. 22% is a very attractive number on paper. But to achieve that number, they have to touch other people's retirement money. This is no longer about quietly fixing a model. This is the point where ethical boundaries begin to be redrawn slowly and imperceptibly until it is too late. Or a deal that leads to mass layoffs in Ohio. Real people lose their jobs, real families are affected. But on a spreadsheet, it is just a line item of optimized cost. The question is, do they truly not care about the cost paid by the people affected by their own decisions? Or has this machine trained them to see only numbers, EBITDA metrics, profit margins? The answer is not simply that they are cold-blooded or inhuman. At the VP level, the question is this: a good deal has been completely removed from the equation. The only remaining question is this deal executable? All ethical consequences are obscured behind layers of intermediaries, lawyers, consultants, hundreds of pages of contractual terms. When consequences are no longer visible, conscience gradually falls asleep. But this is where things become truly interesting. The biggest bottleneck to advancing from VP to Level 4, Director, does not lie in Excel skills, nor in the ability to value cash flows. At this inflection point, those things are almost worthless. The game has shifted from being a strong executor to being a strong salesperson. Money is no longer a capability, money is an informational advantage and a network of relationships. A $2.8 billion mandate was lost, not because of miscalculation, not because of a weak proposal, but simply because the rival director happened to belong to the same elite charity club as the chairman of the client company. Thousands of hours of analysis thrown away. All because of a round of golf or a glass of wine in a private setting where defenses are lowered and trust is built faster than any presentation slide. And the reaction of the losing director. He immediately joined 2 more elite clubs within a month because he understood relationships are the core infrastructure. Information is useless if no one trusts you enough to hand you their money. And as they move into levels 5 and 6 analytical skills, give way entirely to something else, the art of financial diplomacy. At level 5, the managing director no longer sits there running financial models. They are rainmakers, the ones who bring in the rain. Millions of dollars in revenue come from networks of relationships built over decades. Their income jumps to $900,000 to over $2 million a year. Not because they are smarter than the analysts they once were, but because they hold something that cannot be replicated, the trust of those who have money. And that trust sometimes leads to decisions that any first-year economics student would shake their head at. A $900 million revolving credit facility extended to a company with an increasingly deteriorating balance sheet, mounting debt, and a very real risk of default. So why did that director approve it? Because losing the relationship with that corporate client would cost 3 times more than the risk of losing the loan entirely. That is not a financial decision. It is a political decision disguised under the cover of finance. And it carries the weight of a web of relationships built over decades that no spreadsheet can ever quantify. But if the managing director is the one who gathers the flow of capital, then level 6 partner is the one who decides where that capital will go. The power of capital allocation. Look at a specific deal, a $4.3 billion acquisition of European energy infrastructure. Involved in this are a Middle Eastern investment fund and a Canadian pension fund. To complete the deal, the partner sets up a sophisticated structure, a holding company in Luxembourg, to take advantage of favorable tax treaties, with capital flowing into an intermediary fund in the Cayman Islands to avoid double taxation. Completely legal, but so complex that almost no one other than the person who designed it can fully understand the entire structure. And from that complexity, the carried interest, the additional profit share from this single deal alone, brings the partner $40 million into their personal pocket from one deal. At the partner level, they no longer react to the market. They create the market. When they deploy capital, the world has to follow. But who is the one who creates the chessboard that the partners themselves are playing on level 7? The final layer, the darkest zone of the pyramid. Hidden power belonging to offices that almost no one even knows by name. Return to the room in Geneva. That 71-year-old man has been inside the system for 47 years. He sits on a capital deployment committee across 14 markets, managing more than $90 billion in assets. And that $90 billion figure, only 4 people in the world know it. They are almost invisible to the media. The core difference of those at this level is not that they are good at risk management. It is that they never react to risk. They anticipate liquidity stress 2 years in advance and set up structures before the market even realizes there is a problem. The media may call it visionary genius, but in reality, they do not predict outcomes, they shape outcomes. Power so great that the cost of dismantling that network would cause more destruction than simply letting it continue to operate. But the price they pay is absolute isolation. Decisions that shake the market are made with a 6-minute nod, yet the number of people they truly trust in this world is fewer than 10. They have merged with the machine for so long that they no longer know how to be a normal human being. And this is the moment to look back at the entire journey. We have moved from a 23-year-old sitting in front of 3 screens at dawn, believing in hard work, through the silent ethical erosion of the VP, through the closed-door clubs of the director, through the labyrinthine financial structures of the partner, and all the way to the silhouette of the 71-year-old man in Geneva, a man whose name the world does not know yet, whose decisions shape the fate of millions. It is a complete transformation, from labor to information to trust to systemic control. But a new variable is emerging that none of those 7 layers of power have ever had to face. Artificial intelligence is automating the lowest layers of the pyramid, replacing hundreds of hours of modeling, by analysts compressing it into seconds. Informational power is concentrating more intensely than ever into the hands of an increasingly smaller group. And that leads to an unanswered question. When AI not only replaces repetitive tasks, but can also absorb the entirety of human data, predict the macro moves of the hidden forces at level 7, then who will hold the 8th level of power in the future? The humans, with the deepest networks of relationships, or a mindless machine that understands that network more clearly than the humans who created it.